you want to be a part of the ECE Makerspace community?
Well, I've always been sort of a doer, tinkerer, everythinger, as I was mentioning earlier, but I wasn't actually planning on it. I was involved in a couple startups and doing my own thing after I graduated, and then Professor Nguyen kind of tried to share with me his vision for what he wanted to change the EC department to, and we were long-standing friends after I graduated, so I shared with him about my experiences and what I lacked in my EC education, so I think gave him the idea, hey, this guy would be useful in this space. So we talked about it, and he brought me in, and the rest is history.
Makerspace is a prototyping lab that has 3D printers, a laser cutter, soldering stations, and other apparatuses needed to build things. Why is building things important to you and beneficial to ECE engineering students?
So this goes actually back to my undergrad. So I was an undergrad here as an ECE major, and when I came in, what really got me excited, actually, I still remember one of the early classes, it was ECE 28. The curriculum's completely changed now, but ECE 28 was your first introductory course to ECE, and I remember the TA telling me, once you finish this degree, you're going to be able to completely rewire a car or any electronic system, and it's going to be like you have secret knowledge that other people don't have. And so that got me really excited. It's like, oh wow, I can do real things with my hands and build stuff. That was not my experience at all. So besides that class, which was, we built a little line following robot, kind of like they do in ECE 5 now, there was not a single class where I actually did anything tangible other than theoretical work. And so I graduated, and when I graduated, I felt this overwhelming sense that I did not really know how to do anything. And that was very frustrating for me. So I feel as a student, I actually give this analogy in my classes because I teach hands-on classes now. I give this analogy where, theoretical education is a lot like giving you, I give you a nice shiny red toolbox, and I say, here's a hammer, put it in your toolbox. Here's a screwdriver, put it in your toolbox. And then that's it. And then 4 years later, I tell you, go and fix cars now. And so you know how to use the tools. Theoretically, you know what a hammer does, you know what a screwdriver does. It doesn't teach you anything about how to fix a car, right? Until you get your hands in there and then apply the theory that you're learning. For most students, that knowledge is there until finals day and then gone finals day +1. So personally, that was my experience, and I didn't want that for other students. So.
Wow, that's amazing. So what value does it add to our community?
What value does what add?
Building things, because I know that you mentioned that it does add with getting the hands-on experience. So in that sense, it's pretty much the same thing then?
Definitely the hands-on experience. I think it helps students also form friendships and relationships, and there's a sense of camaraderie with the hands-on classes. A lot of the students that I've taught personally still are working together. I kind of jokingly say there was one couple that formed in one of my classes. They were on the same team. They didn't know each other before the class, but they spent so much time working on the projects together. They started dating at the end of it. So it's that's not really the value I'm talking about. It does kind of help, I think, engineers develop much needed social skills, as well as understanding deliverables, understanding how to actually allot time for things, because a hands-on project-based course, which is really what the Makerspace is for, takes considerable amount of time. You can take a theoretical class and potentially learn more than a hands-on class for much less time, but without applying that knowledge, I personally think you're actually learning less. So it's time management skills, community skills, all those things.
Oh wow, you're answering like a lot of my questions.
Cool.
So I guess this is on the same sense of what you were just saying, but as a little more. So I know that Jacobs School of Engineering wanted to create a makerspace to give engineering students opportunity to compete within industry by exposing them to hands-on projects that could give them practical skills and knowledge within their field of study. Do you feel this space achieves that, or does it need to be expanded into something more?
That's actually an excellent question. I think yes and yes. So we've had a lot of talk with industry representatives and people who are sort of recruiting our students right now, and I think we're definitely headed in the right direction. They're liking the fact. I had a couple friends over at GA actually a couple years ago talking to me about how they used to prefer SDSU students over UCSD students because they just felt like UCSD students needed to get trained from the beginning every time they would hire them, and it just was so much work for them. And I think by having a makerspace and a community where students can actually come and work on things, it gives them that confidence. It gives them the experience that they can say, okay, now I've got a circuit that I built that is an amplifier, and I learned about amplifiers, but here I can showcase this thing. And I think it helps them remember those things, and so when industry sees that, they're much more eager to hire those individuals.
So I didn't mention that those were your heavy questions, so now you have your lighter questions.
Okay.
Even though you mentioned some of it, where did you study and what was your major in college?
Okay, I studied at UCSD forever. I did my undergrad here I started in 2001. I actually came in not as ECE, I came in as mechanical and aerospace. I wanted to be an astronaut. Long story there. If you want to have a conversation about that some other time, I can explain.
Awesome.
But shortly afterwards, I switched into ECE, and really my ambition. So this was actually kind of telltale of what ECE, how bad our department. I shouldn't say how bad. How much our department has grown from my experience. Because when I came into the ECE department, nobody really could explain to me what ECE was. I was trying to get into the CS department, but it was packed. And so they told me ECE is the next best thing. So that was like, okay, well, I can't get into CS anymore because I came in as MAE, so I'll go into ECE. And I couldn't really figure it out until I started taking the courses and making sense of it. Because when you talk about ECE, it's like, oh, are you an electrician? People don't really get how much electronic components drive everything, right? When we look at a phone, we think about software, but we don't get where the ECE major sits in this. So that was kind of my undergrad experience. Graduated in 2005. I was working at Qualcomm my senior year, and my manager actually told me, you should go back to school and get a PhD because I think you're limited in your growth here. And he was a good friend of mine, he still is. He said, anytime you want to come back, no worries, we'll hire you back, but I really think you should go get a PhD. So I was like, well, I don't really want to leave San Diego. I like UCSD. I'll apply. If I get in, I get in. If I don't, I don't. I got into the PhD program, did my master's in computer vision, and then I was working on some autonomous vehicle traffic characterization. So I was actually watching the road behind Atkinson Hall. What is it now? It keeps changing. Qualcomm Institute. I was monitoring that road 24/7 for any just abnormal vehicle behavior. And this was sort of before the age of the deep neural networks that are popular now. So it was all classical machine learning. Did my master's, and then couldn't figure out what I wanted to do for my PhD. Decided to take a leave of absence. I connected with a professor in CogSci, and I really got interested in, they were building these really large-scale, giant, essentially iPads, but they were multi-touch surfaces where they'd be sort of for collaborative environments. You can interact and edit videos together and things like that. And they had a project for somebody with an EE background to work on it. So I jumped on that, and I worked on that for about a year, and couldn't figure out what to do for a PhD, but I was really interested in it, made a lot of good friends. And then, again, and it seems to be the case with, I think, mentor-like figures tell me their advice, and I kind of follow it. So my PI at the time told me he really thought I would make a great doctor.
Oh, wow.
So I took that to heart.
You graduated?
I was actually, I connected with the Institute of Engineering and Medicine here,
Oh, wow.
and they were trying to get me into the MD PhD program. But it was a long story. I got into Professor Nguyen's lab, started working on my PhD with a medical focus, and then I also started going back and I took all the pre-med courses. So I started with Build 1, Chem 6, and I was a PhD student taking freshman level bio and chem courses, but I loved it. I was like, this is so cool. So I did that and then got my PhD, and the plan was to do the MD after that, but my defense got a little bit of buzz, and we decided to start a company, and that tanked. It wasn't because of the technology, it was because of the products. We didn't really understand the customers as well as I thought, but I learned a lot about entrepreneurship and about what it means to actually build technologies with a customer in mind. And so from there, started getting involved in some other startup projects, learned a ton, and then that's how Professor Norman brought me back, and he said, would you want to teach a class where it's kind of technically focused with this entrepreneurial mindset so that students understand that they're not just working on projects in a vacuum, that if somebody's not buying your product, it doesn't make sense. There's no reason to build it unless it's for personal enjoyment. I think EC students don't really get that experience, and that's kind of what developed into EC 140 A and B, which my longtime friend and I teach together, and students love that class, and I love teaching that class. So, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. You're really interesting. Well, what got you interested in your major? Like, what made you believe that this was the field for you?
That was really hard. I've sort of, like I said, I've been kind of an everythinger all my life, where it's like I really enjoy being. I hate the feeling of missing out on something. So, you know, if someone's playing hockey, I want to learn how to play hockey. So I wanted to do everything, and I basically was pursuing a degree where I could have as versatile of a background as I could, so that I could have a career in anything I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of led me to want to be an engineer, and like I said, the astronaut story is a long story of why I didn't pursue it. But when that kind of moved out of the picture, I started exploring, you know, what could I do to make myself as renaissance of a man as possible, I guess.
That's so cool. Okay, why did you choose UC San Diego as a place to pursue your career goals in?
Because the weather sucks here. I'm just kidding.
Oh, okay, I'm like, it does?
No, I'm joking. Well, there were a lot of factors. Honestly, it was my last choice, and I got into all my other top choices.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to get into 4 schools. It was Caltech, Berkeley, UCLA, and UCSD, and it was in that order. And I visited all the campuses. I really didn't want to be at Berkeley, but I knew it was a good school, and I knew UCSD was a great school, and I was living in San Diego in high school, so it was convenient and familiar. And I went to visit Caltech, and it was beautiful. And so I was struggling a lot, but then I decided UCSD was, I think, an opportunity for me to express myself, whereas, you know, I had friends who went to Caltech, and Professor Norman's from Caltech, so you can't badmouth that school. But pretty much what happened was that they felt like you become too much of an engineer. It's all engineering all the time. You work, it's very competitive, and so I thought that was not going to be for me, because I'm more of a, like I said, I like to have the soft skills and the hard skills and all that stuff. And, you know, of the remaining 3, it seemed like UCSD made the most sense. It had, you know, the enrichment programs that seemed very appealing. And then when I came here, I started getting involved in a bunch of stuff that just convinced me it was the right place to be.